Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Riedesel, and next to me is Alma Guzman. We're the two grants associates with the City of LA Department of Cultural Affairs Grants Division. Together, we'll be presenting this webinar on our cultural grant program. We have it separated in two halves. The first part is an overview of the grants program, and the second part is an overview of the actual application form. So I'll be talking about the application form, but we will begin with the overview of the grants program presented by Alma.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate you being here and being a part of this and wanting to learn more about the opportunities that we offer artists and arts organizations. In front of you, you see just a short blurb about the DCA. The Department of Cultural Affairs also goes by DCA, and the DCA exists to promote art and culture as a way to ignite powerful dialogue and engage LA's residents and visitors. DCA is composed of 4 divisions. The first is grant making, which is us. We have community arts, public art, and marketing and development. To learn more about cultural affairs, you can also visit our website. It's culturela.org. And we're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. So just a few facts about DCA. We were formed in 1990 because the city realized that we needed to support arts organizations and artists providing services to our residents. The budget has fluctuated between 2.1 and 3.3 million per year. This year, our budget is around 3 million, and we're supporting over 300 projects with that budget. Grants currently range from 1,200 to 55,000, and of course, this depends on our budget every year. It depends on the budget of the organization that's applying, and it also depends on the score you receive from panelists. Each grant dollar awarded for arts and culture leverages a minimum of $4 in individual, private, and corporate dollars. And currently, we partner with over 250 grantees to provide services to the City of LA. So when crafting your narrative, please keep the following priorities in mind. We're looking for free or low-cost public projects. One of our goals is accessibility. We're looking for participatory and skill-building programs. So programs where audiences and participants have opportunities to learn and grow. Projects that reach arts underserved geographic areas of the city. And if you're wondering what those areas are mainly South LA and the Valley. And the specific council districts are Council District 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12. We're also looking for projects that create opportunities and develop jobs for workers. And then we are looking for projects that have great enrollment and exposure. So here we have our categories of grants. And before we get into the specific categories, I just want to remind everyone about eligibility requirements. We are looking for applicants that are nonprofit 501c3 organizations with a primary purpose to provide arts and cultural services. Applicants must have an emphasis on arts and culture in their mission statement. Applicants must be headquartered in the County of LA and be providing services in the City of LA. And applicants should have a minimum of 1 year prior arts programming within the City of LA. So let's jump into categories. We have 2 main categories, artistic projects and operating projects. And artistic projects are usually the production of 1 or more public programs. Examples are maybe an exhibition or film screenings, concerts, What else, Chris?
Well, you already said museum exhibitions, but theater performances, poetry workshops, readings, could be outdoor Shakespeare performances.
Yeah.
Anything artistic in nature.
Yeah. And we also have operating projects. And operating projects support an element of an existing strategic plan. So if you do check off this category, please keep in mind that you would have to attach a strategic plan to your application. And we usually just support an element of your plan. So for example, if in your plan you have a part-time marketing manager that you want to move into a full-time marketing manager, then that could be considered an element, and that you can include in your proposal, and that we can fund. We also have a category for outdoor festivals and parades. And this is the only category where non-arts nonprofits can apply for funding. And arts nonprofits can apply for a second grant under this category. Monthly art walks, film screenings, or outdoor concerts are not eligible through this category. A film screening or an outdoor concert would be considered an artistic project. The proposed festival or parade should take place at a single site over one day or over one weekend. So again, we don't want to see monthly events under this category. So we do require a match for our grants. They need to be a 1-to-1 match. And your match can be a combination of cash and in-kind donated services. So please keep that in mind. If you do request a grant of $5,000, or you do receive a grant of $5,000, we want to see another $5,000 come from different sources. So you may be wondering how much you can request. So if you consider yourself an extra large budget organization or a large budget organization, you may request up to 4% of your most recently completed fiscal year, up to a max of $80,000. If you consider yourself a mid-sized organization, you may request up to 10% of your last completed fiscal year budget, up to a max of $40,000. If you're a small organization, you may request up to 20% and up to, you may request up to 20% of your last completed fiscal year budget, up to $10,000. If you are smaller than small, we do have a category for you. This is the Emerging Arts Organization category. And this is a category for new organizations or very small nonprofit organizations with an operating budget of less than $20,000. Applicants can request up to $1,500 to $3,000. Currently, we're only accepting projects that take place in our underserved council districts. So here you see a listing of the disciplines that apply for grants. Just a reminder that this year we are accepting applications from visual organizations, visual arts organizations, culture history organizations, literary arts.
Media arts, as in film festivals or broadcast centered organizations, traditional and folk art, as well as business management and arts advocacy organizations. And new is to this cycle will be outdoor festivals and parades.
And if you do consider yourself a performing arts organization, you can still apply. You'd be eligible for 1 year funding. You would have to apply again next year to get back on cycle and be eligible for 2 years of funding. So this is our timeline. This is our last webinar. We will be providing a recording on our site, so you want to refer back to any of the information that's shared today, you can check out that webinar. You can also call us at any time or email us to get any clarification on the guidelines or any parts of the application. The online submission deadline is August 25th, 2017. That's a Friday. You can either mail it in. That's our postmark. I'm sorry. The August 25th deadline is our online deadline, but we do require you submit a hard copy of your application, and that deadline is August 30th. You can either mail it in or you could drop it off at our office. And just a heads up about our office, we are located in downtown LA. It's a really busy area. The parking is bad, so just a heads up about that. You won't hear back from us until May of 2018, so there is a wait time for notifications. Should you receive an award, we'd be contracting with you during the month of June 2018. And just a reminder that you are applying for projects that take place between July 1st, 2018 and June 30th, 2019. So we are working with a new online grant system that's called Fluid Review. To access the system, you must first register on Fluid Review, so create a username and password. And then once you register, you are required to complete a profile summary. Chris will go into this, but the profile summary is basically just contact information, address, email, that fun stuff. And then the second part is, of course, to fill out the online application. And step 3 is, of course, submitting the application and mailing out a copy to our office by Wednesday, August 30th. Our guidelines are actually located on a microsite called dcaredesign.org/grants. And we'll visit that microsite really quickly. So this is what it looks like. If you want more detailed information about the sections that are part of the application, just visit this website. We have more information about eligibility requirements, the panel review process, and what the panel looks at when reviewing your application. We have more information about the terminology that you might come across when completing your application. We have more information about deadlines and preparing your proposal. If you need to contact us, of course, here is our information. And I believe this is it for the first half of the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris, who will walk you through the actual application.
We just need to get the screen switched over to mine, which will take just a moment. So the screen that I have up right now is a screen that you'll see once you've registered and logged in to our application system on fluidreview.com. The very first thing that you'll be asked to fill out will be the profile information for your organization. And this profile information is essentially the legal name of your organization, the popular name if it's different, phone number, a couple phone numbers. This is essentially the phone numbers for the person who will be the contact person for the organization, as well as email address. And the website. The next two numbers are numbers that you will eventually need to have if you do get recommended for a grant. But if you don't have them, the first one is we call it the Bevan ID number. Los Angeles Business Assistance Virtual Network. And the second one is the Business Tax Registration Certificate number. Both of these are optional. If you don't have them, leave the fields blank. But if you do get recommended for a grant, you will need to have both of these numbers when we contract with you. In addition to these items, we will ask you to provide your mailing address and your physical address if it's different from your mailing address. This information will be used to autofill certain sections of the application, but it is important to note that the autofill will only work the very first time you open up the application. So if you enter information into your profile, start your application, it will autofill with the stuff that you've already entered. If you go back and edit the information in your general information profile, you'll have to edit that in the application itself. Now let's get to the application. When you first log in, you'll have to select the number of applications that you want to prepare. Most organizations will be selecting or entering one application. If you are one of those organizations that plan on submitting an artistic project grant or an operating project grant along with a festival grant, then you can enter 2, and you'll have to prepare 2 grant proposals. Each grant proposal has a unique application ID number, and you can click on that to enter the application, or you can click on Edit to enter the application. On the right-hand side, you'll see some basic I'm going to say things you can do with your profile. They call this a logo, but it could be a random picture, but you can upload your logo here. You can always remove it and replace it with another logo. And you can add additional people to work on the application as well as yourself. So you can have multiple people working on the same application. The last button that we'll go over is Download Submission. We'll be going over that at the end of the webinar. It'll be the last thing that you'll need to do when submitting your proposal. Up at the top of the page, there are the different tabs right here. And the one that you should remember is Resources. If you click on Resources, there are 4 documents there that will be needed throughout your proposal. They're accessible elsewhere, but if you can't find them at the other locations, you can also find them here. So we'll be going through the elements of the proposal in the order that we see them on the page. The very first item that we see is the actual organizational grant proposal application form. We have some brief instructions for each section. If you want to see the form before entering the application, you can download it here. This is a Microsoft Word version of it, or you can download it from the resources page that I just showed you. And you can enter information there and cut and paste it into the online application when you're ready. Let's go to the online application. So the online application itself is 3 pages long. This doesn't refer to 3 physical pages. It's 3 content-related pages. The first page is summary information on the organization and on the project. And a lot of this information will be auto-filled from the profile that you filled in. Once again, we see the legal name, also known as the official IRS name, popular name, your address here and your mailing address, contact for the person that will be the contact person for the grant should you be recommended for it. And you can see here under website, some computer code. I entered the website into the profile after starting this application, so this is what happens where the autofill doesn't work after the first time around. So you can just delete it here and enter in the new information right here. And you'll be fine. The next three numbers are numbers that I'd gone over the two other numbers, the BAVN and the BTRC. Again, those are numbers that you will need should you get recommended for a grant, but for the application itself are only optional. The Dun & Bradstreet number is the number used by the federal government should you apply for an NEA grant. So it's always beneficial to have that number as well. The first thing that we ask about your organization is to tell us what budget size you are. And you'll notice that there's an overlap between some of the categories, between mid-size and large, between small and mid, and between emerging and small organizations. This gives applicants the opportunity to strategically pick which budget category may be best for them. And should you fall into this situation, please give us a call and we will be able to walk you through the different reasonings behind choosing one category over another. The next thing that we ask is that you select the discipline of the proposed project, and be careful that you select the discipline of the project as opposed to the discipline of the organization. We want to make sure that the panel reviewing the proposal will be the best panel to do so. Some organizations do projects across many disciplines or interdisciplinary projects. Sometimes an organization concentrates for the most part on, say, visual arts, but has a poetry workshop and wants to get grant funding for that. So even though it's primarily a visual arts organization, it should click on literary in that situation because the project is a series of poetry readings, and that's a proposal best reviewed by literary experts. After selecting the discipline of the project proposal, the proposed project, we ask that you enter what your grant request will be. And we have a reminder question here asking if you've completed the Data Arts Funder report. And we ask for your prior year's annual revenue. This number should be verified either by your Data Arts Funder report or by a financial snapshot. The next question that we ask will be, what type of proposal are you submitting? The first few options are project proposals. Artistic project, the first option, is the most common project or proposal that is submitted to Cultural Affairs. The next one is arts education. As we define that, an arts education project consists of a series of activities taking place during school hours in the school, culminating with at least one public event that takes place outside of school hours. The next type of project grant, and this should only be clicked by organizations that have selected the discipline above business education advocacy for the arts. This is a type of project that is not artistic in nature, but supports artists and or arts organizations. We have examples right there in the description. Some examples of these projects would be seminars or educational services. The next type of project is an operating project, and Alma describes that. This is a project that is an element of a strategic plan, such as supporting the salary of an administrative staff member or supporting a marketing campaign. These are projects that, while not directly arts projects, are indirectly supporting those arts projects. The last type of proposal that you could be submitting is an outdoor festival or parade. And we define an outdoor festival or parade obviously as something that takes place outdoors, but takes place at a single public site, such as a street, set of streets, or a public park or public plaza, and it takes place over one day or over one weekend, and it's an annual event. Our next question is a survey question. We're asking you to select no more than 2 options that best describe what DCA grant funding will specifically support within your proposed project. Most applicants will be selecting free or low-cost social activities. But outside of that, you may pick one or another of the remaining 3, which would be community dialogue, lifelong learning, or cultural arts jobs. You may just end up selecting one. That's fine. The next 2 questions are all about council districts. The first question is, where is your organization located? In order to be eligible to apply for a grant through DCA, your organization needs to be located within Los Angeles County. So if you're in the city of LA, we want to know which council district you're in. And if you don't know which council district you're in, you can click on this link here to take you directly to a handy application on the city website. And just type in an address. You can see I've done this before. And it'll list all kinds of handy information about that address. The most important one to us is the council district of that address. So that's Council District 3. We'll click that. If you're located outside the city of LA, but in the county of Los Angeles, then you will click this button here and enter where you're located. So let's say Culver City. The next question we asked is, we asked you to click the location of the project. Once again, we provide a link to the neighborhood info app if you need to find the council district of the address that you'll be working at. We expect to see a couple of these council districts selected. The only reason that an organization would select all council districts is if you're doing a broadcast that reaches all of these council districts through the internet, through radio, or through television. There are a very small number of organizations that actually tour to schools within all of the council districts, but those are the few occasions where we see all the council districts selected. Most commonly, we expect to see just 1, 2, or 3 council districts selected. In this section here, we ask that you enter the start and end dates of the proposed project. We want to make sure it's taking place between July 1st, 2018 and June 30th, 2019. The next thing that we ask is we want to know the number of participants and audience members involved with your project. This number will be used to help you calculate the cost per head ratio, which will be an important element of evaluating your project. The first part of this number is the number of participants. And the participants would include project administrators, artists, instructors, students, and others involved in the project. The second part of this number is the number of audience members who will be witnessing the culminating event or exhibition. And then the system automatically totals the number right here, and you'll need this number later on for the cost per head ratio. Lastly on this page, we ask that you select up to 5 target groups, special constituencies that benefit or you intend to benefit from your proposed project. We have a large variety of options here, but we ask that you only click on the categories or the constituencies that you are purposely targeting. You may have events that people from any of these groups happen to show up. But if you're not actively targeting these audiences as beneficiaries of your project, it doesn't really make sense to click that constituency. The reason that you should only select the constituencies you're actively targeting is that at some point in the narrative, we'll be asking you to tell us how you intend to impact these audience members. At this point, I'm going to show you how to navigate between the 3 pages of this form. You will be able to see all 3 pages of this form without filling in the data, but you have to navigate in a particular manner. At the bottom, you'll see these buttons here, and then the next 2 pages, you'll see previous page of form, as well as next page of form. These buttons should only be clicked if you've completed the data on this page. Otherwise, the system won't allow you to advance or go back 1 page. If you want to jump from 1 page to another, then you scroll up to the top and you use this little tool here, the go to 1, 2, or 3. We're currently on page 1 right now, but we could jump to 3 if we wanted to. We'll get a message here asking us if we're certain about this. Make sure that you've saved any data before you jump. Let's click OK. So we're now on page 3, but we skipped ahead. Let's go back to page 2. Let's do that right now. And you'll notice right here is a back button. So that back button takes you outside of the form and puts you back into the list of tasks that you need to complete for the application. So you should only click this button if you want to leave the form. The second page is the narrative section of the application. And the narrative is broken down into 2 major aspects. The first is organization narrative, and the second will be the project narrative. And you see next to some of these questions a little starburst symbol. These questions are commonly shared between the grant applications of many of the municipal funders in Southern California, as well as a handful of foundations. Our hope is that with these commonly shared questions, if you filled out a proposal through one of us, you'll have this information already and we'll just be able to cut and paste into another grant application. So the first thing that we ask in the narrative is the mission of the organization. And you'll see in each of the narrative boxes, we provide the limit of what can be written in there in characters. There's also a character count at the bottom. So between the 2, you should be able to keep track of how much space you have left with your answer. The next question is about the history of your organization. We want you to briefly describe the overall history of the organization, its core programs and services. If you've been around a long time, you don't necessarily need to describe each and everything you've accomplished every year. We just need to know a broad overview of the history of your organization and a few details about the most recent years and most recent accomplishments in those years. The next section of the narrative is about the planning and leadership of the organization. We want to know where the organization wants to be artistically, administratively, and financially within the next 2 years. List your short-term goals and what has been established to work towards this desired state. What specific steps have been taken recently to move towards those goals? We want to know how board and staff members contribute to the applicant's overall planning. The next category is about the organization's community and core audience. This is where we want you to describe the community that you serve, your core audience, in terms of geography, age, cultural, and economic characteristics as applicable. Describe how you, as the applicant, identify your community core audience needs and how you develop programs to meet these needs. The last section of the organizational narrative is the artistic policy of the organization. We would like to know how artistic decisions are made for the organization. Do you have an artistic director? Do you have a panel of senior staff members that decide upon it? Do you have input from your audience through advisory panels? Do you do surveys? However it's done, we just want to know. In addition, we want to know what your policy or practice is in regards to payment of artists. As part of our mission, Department of Cultural Affairs is to make sure there's free and accessible art services throughout LA. We also want to make sure that artists are getting paid. So if you are paying artists, that'll be beneficial. If you're not paying artists, it will be good for us to know why that's the case. The next section is all about your proposed project. This is where you describe the project that you want to get DCA grant funding for. So the more details, the better. If you've written a description that leaves no questions once it's been read, then you've succeeded. So we want you to tell us what the project is, where the project will take place, when it will take place, how the project advances your organization's mission, and why this project would support DCA's mission in terms of providing free and low-cost services throughout the city of LA. So essentially just think what, where, when, how, and why. Answer all of those questions. The more details, the better. The second part of the project narrative is about how your organization evaluates its services. We would not, when we ask about evaluation, you don't necessarily need to talk about how you provide evaluation or do evaluation for the proposed grant project. This is especially the case if you're doing a project that, or requesting support for a project that you've only done for 1 or 2 years. So you've just begun collecting data on it. So you may have another program that you've done for a while and you've got evaluation models for that that works well for you. You can explain how you do evaluation for that, and that will give the panel a good idea overall how your organization evaluates what it does. But we've broken down this question into 4 sub-questions. The first one is we want you to provide metrics from at least one prior experience as numerical data with a brief summary of that information. Then for the second part, we want you to note how you adjusted or how you may adjust your services based on the metrics that you've described above. And then the third part, this ties into the special constituencies I mentioned on the first page. For each of the ones that you've selected, we want you to provide a statement or description of what your intentions are in regards impacting that audience. We call it here social change intentions. So how do you intend to impact those special constituencies that you've selected? This is where you should describe that. And the last section is we want you to justify the cost per head ratio of your proposed project. And we'll show you how that's calculated on the last page of this application form. But once you have that number, we want you to describe whatever that number might be, how that number is justified by the depth or breadth of your project. Is it an immersive project where kids with lots of needs or your audience members with lots of needs are immersed in a project that provides a deep resources as well as instruction? Or is it the kind of project where people come and just watch a performance? Obviously, the more engagement there is in a project, the more aligned it is with the DCA grants program. So I'll talk a little more about the cost per head ratio when we get to the question where that's calculated on the third page. The last part on this page is we want you to provide brief bios on key staff members and key artists that will be working on the project. So we just ask for a name, title, and a biography. Each of the biographies have a limit of 750 characters, approximately 150 words. So we provided, right off the bat, you can list up to 5 folks, 5 staff members, 5 artists. And if that's not enough, you can scroll down here and it'll ask, do you want to add more? And if you click yes, 5 more will pop up. But if 5 is enough, you can just check no and you're done with that page. If you have a lot of artists involved with your project, and you want to provide brief bios on all of them, and there are more than 10, then attach additional bios in your supplemental material section of the application. And these additional bios won't be counted towards the limit of 4 supplemental items that you can attach. Let's move on to the last page. The last page of the organization application is all financial. We're going to ask for your project budget, the income side, and the expense side. Because it's a project, we expect that the totals for the income and the expenses will be the same. We want to know how much your project will cost and where the money will come from to pay for those expenses. So if it's going to cost $50,000, what's the breakdown in the $50,000 of revenue to cover those costs? Starting with the income, we have the different line items that you can fill in. You don't necessarily need to fill in all the line items, just fill in the ones that are appropriate. Enter a dollar number here on the left side and notes on the right-hand side. Once again, the more description, the better. If a reviewer reads the budget and has questions, then that indicates there were places where notes could have been added to prevent that from happening. So if you have an event where you have ticket sales, you put in the number here, be sure to enter a brief description as to how you came to that total. So if you had $1,000 in ticket sales, it would be helpful to know 100 tickets. That's $10 each. That helps the panel know that your projections are based on a practical concept, as well as it gives the panel the idea that the event will be accessible or low cost or even free maybe. And it will let the panel know it'll back up the number of participants that will be involved with the project. So make sure that your proposal is consistent between your financial information, your narrative information, and your summary information. On our microsite that Alma described, there are descriptions for each of these sections. If you have income or expenses that you can't quite figure out which line item to put it in, let us know and we'll help you find the right line to put it into. The second part of the income chart is for contributed income. And we have a reminder here that line 21 should include the DCA grant request that is listed in question D of the project summary on page 1 of this form. We had entered $19,200. So we put that number here in line 21. When it comes to your contributions, once again, notes are always beneficial. If you have many sponsors and you run out of space here, I've listed Coca-Cola, Toyota, Sears. But if you have a large number of sponsors and you don't have enough space here, you have a big box down here where you can enter much more information. So as always, the more detail, the better, and this, especially in terms of notes on your income sources here. So we've got a total of $51,200. Let's move on to the expenses. And just like the income, the first column is for the dollar amount, and the second column are notes explaining that dollar amount. And we see that our grand total expenses are also $51,200, which is what we're expecting, so that's good. And here is where we calculate the cost per head ratio. We're taking a number from the public impact of proposed services, and we're dividing that into the grand total of expenses here, which should be the same as your grand total of income, and that'll be your cost per head ratio. The cost per head ratio for most DCA grant-funded projects falls between, I would say, $10 and $25 cost per head ratio. If we're primarily concerned with projects where the cost per head ratio gets much higher than that. That's not necessarily a problem. It just might be an indicator that the project is much more immersive, intensive than many other projects. An example would be a summer arts camp for foster youth that ends with a culminating event that can be attended by the public and family members and friends of the youth attendees. So consider that it's a week-long project and it may cost $50,000 to do, but it can only serve 50 youth based upon how many, the safety requirements and instructional needs of the youth. So you're going to have a high cost per head ratio, but it's an immersive project, and you can make an argument that it takes that kind of investment to create a positive impact or positive result with your project. So don't be frightened right away by a high cost per head ratio. There might be a good reason for it. Just be sure to clearly explain it. And speaking of explanations, we want to know if the reasonings or the reasons behind large variances. So if you submit to us a Data Arts Funder report or a financial snapshot, and there's large differences in financial or programmatic activity between one year and the next, and we give a guideline of 25% or more change in income or expense, then we want to know the reason why. It might be something positive, like you got an unusually large grant for a capital project where you're repairing or purchasing a building. Or it might be you had an unusually good year in individual contributions. It might be a negative thing, like you lost a major contract to schools to provide artistic workshops. Whatever the reason is, we just want to know, and we want to know, it helps reviewers know that you're being honest, and also how you're addressing large changes, whether they be positive or negative. So we have two different sections here. If you have explanations on variances for your Data Arts Funder report, then you check yes here, and the field will pop up. Now we don't have a word or a character limit on explanations for variances. We didn't want to provide arbitrary limits for perhaps sometimes confusing things. So this is a section for describing your variances in your Data Arts Funder report. And if you have variances between between the Data Arts Funder report and your financial snapshot, or between years in your financial snapshot, then you check yes here. and you provide the explanation for those variances down here. And that completes the organizational application form. Let's click the back button to kick ourselves out of this application form and look at the rest of the application elements. Much of the rest of the elements will be items that you are uploading or attaching to the proposal. The first thing that we'll ask you to upload is your Data Arts Funder report. The Data Arts Funder report should include the 2 most recently completed fiscal years of your organization. If you're not able to have the most recently completed fiscal year in your Data Arts Funder report, then that's when you should when you should upload a financial snapshot. And by financial snapshot, we mean just a 1 or 2 page profit and loss statement or similar document that shows your financial activity for the most recent fiscal year. Now, all of the sections where you're required to upload something, they all look like this. They have a box here where you can grab your item and drop it in here to upload, or you can browse and search for a file and find the item you want to upload. And I'll upload it right there. Click back. And you'll also notice on each of these upload sections that there's a listing of what file formats are accepted for each of those upload sections. And this changes from one section to the next depending on what we're asking to be uploaded. You see there's a back button in each of these sections. The next item that we ask is that you upload here we go. We ask that you upload a copy of your 501c3 IRS designation letter, or some organizations have a 501c6. This is where we ask you to upload it. We ask for you to submit a current list of the organization's board of directors. This is an Excel spreadsheet that we ask you to fill in, and you can find it right here by clicking on this, or it's on the resources page that I showed earlier. Just download it here. Let me show you what this looks like. So we ask that you list each board member, starting with the officers, by their name, where they reside, where they work, what their professional affiliation and title is. So say it's a CPA that works for an accounting firm, then you would write CPA / Busy Beavers Accounting, year served 15 years. And do that for each of the, starting with the officers, then with the rest of the board members. We have spaces for up to 50 board members, which should be more than enough for any board of any organization that applies for a grant through us. We had previously been asked, if you don't have a vice president, what do you do for that line? Well, you just leave it blank. But organizations are all required to have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. So make sure that those are listed. Then you can save the document once you've filled it in. You save it, and then you upload it right back here. And you can see I've uploaded a previously filled out Excel spreadsheet. The next thing that we ask you to do is to upload a host venue form. The host venue form is found here where it says host venue form 1819. It is also found on the resources page. Let's click on that. Now for each council district that you've selected on the summary page on the first page, we ask that you have a host venue form for a location within that council district. You fill out the top portion of the form, and then you send it to the venue, and they sign and fill out the bottom part, scan it, and send it back to you, and then you can upload it to the application. Now, if you have a large number of locations that you'll be working at, say you do a program that visits 10 schools, it may not be possible to get host venue forms from all 10 schools. So we ask that you provide a list of each of your proposed venues with its name, location, name, address, and council district, and then upload as many host venue forms as you can get. The next few sections will be about the artistic work samples and supplemental material that you'll be uploading or attaching to your proposal. The first thing that we want you to do is describe what you'll be uploading or attaching, and that's the artistic work sample and supplemental material documentation index. That is quite the mouthful, but it is an important form. Use this form to describe the artistic work samples that you'll be uploading or attaching, as well as the supplemental materials that you'll be uploading. So let's talk about the artistic work samples first. We give you two options when it comes to providing artistic work samples. You can attach links, and you do that right within this form down here, and you can attach up to 3 links. Let's say you're attaching 3 links, so you click 3, and 3 fields appear, and you just paste the link in there. If you are uploading items, you can upload up to 10 images or documents. These you'll be uploading in the next section of the application. Right here, though, whether you're attaching URLs or links, or you're uploading documents, please provide a numbered list that matches what you've attached or uploaded to describe what each of the items will be. Now, if you link to, say, video footage, be aware that panelists generally take no more than 5 minutes to review video footage. So if you have an hour-long video sample, be specific in directing which 5 minutes that the panelists should review. And in the bottom section here, as with the work samples above, provide a numbered list of the supplemental materials that you'll be attaching to your proposal. And we limit you to 4 items of supplemental materials. There's the back button. So artistic work samples can consist of, like I said, links to videos on YouTube or Vimeo or other streaming services. It could be links to a website or links to a photo gallery. Anything that can be found online, essentially. You can also upload images, up to 10 images, or documents, or digital versions of published materials. Anything that best represents the artistic output of the project, and also especially audience or participant engagement. So video footage of workshops or video footage of performances or poetry readings, those are always strong work samples. So after you've filled out the artistic documentation index form, and you've either attached the links or you upload artistic work samples here. And the next section is uploading supplemental materials. Now, supplemental materials are items that are generally created by outside voices that provide added information about your project that is positive and indicates the impact that your project has on your audiences. So supplemental materials can be testimonial letters of people who have experienced the program before. It can be write-ups in a newspaper. It can be
marketing material.
Marketing material. It could be curriculum. Well, it's necessary to have, it can be a curriculum or a lesson plan. If you are proposing an arts education project, that actually should be the very first supplemental item that you attach. If you're going to be proposing an operating project, then the very first item that you attach should be a strategic plan. We have other items here that we've listed that could be supplemental items. But once again, these are all items that are generally generated by outside voices that show the impact of the project that you're proposing. And we're getting near the end. After uploading your artistic work samples and your supplemental materials, then you're left with, we have 2 surveys. The important thing to remember about these 2 surveys is the estimated service metrics form and the process evaluation form. These 2 forms are not seen by the panelists reviewing your proposal. They are only seen by DCA grant staff, and they are information that is useful to us in evaluating our program and making it work better from year to year, as well as in terms of research and be able to respond to queries from other city agencies, from the mayor's office, or from journalists, or from the public, especially in regards to the type of audiences or communities or locations where projects are taking place. So the first form, estimated service metrics form, we ask that you provide a breakdown of the racial or ethnic demographics of your board of directors, of your administrative and artistic personnel, and the estimated target audiences to be served. The next section is a breakdown by age of the people who you reach through your project. And there's a second part to this age question, and this is only applicable to projects where the end result is something that is broadcast. We ask that you click how it's being broadcast, whether it's TV, cable, radio, newspapers, or published, either newspapers or magazines. And then indicate what the viewership or readership of those publications are, or broadcasts. The next section is we want to know your outreach numbers. What are the numbers of people that you reach? And this would be not the number of views of what's being sent out, but the size of your, say the number of people on your email list, or the number of friends you have on Facebook, or like we have sections here on social media, or how many printed materials do you print up and distribute? Like say you print up 5,000 postcards each year to promote your project, so you would enter 5,000 there. And the last section of the estimated metrics form is we want you to estimate the number of paying jobs and volunteer opportunities to be created or maintained through this grant-supported project. Considering that our average grant is, I think it's around $8,000 to $10,000 now, maybe a little bit less. We don't really expect to see full-time jobs being supported by our grants, but it's more common to see part-time jobs supported or occasional seasonal work being supported. And we always like to know the number of volunteers that are involved in projects as well. The last survey is the process evaluation form. This is the form that we use. We collect information with this form to evaluate our program. So we asked for people to be forthright in this form, tell us what worked, what didn't work, what was confusing, what was clear. This really helps us to improve our application from year to year. And once you've completed all of the required elements, down at the very bottom, this will change from prerequisites not met to prerequisites met. And you will be able to click the Submit Your Application button. Until that happens, though, you'll just see that little forbidden symbol and you won't be able to submit it. The deadline for the digital submission is August 25th, just before midnight. So make sure you've clicked this before then. This is only the first part of the submission, though. We have a hard copy that needs to be submitted. Once you submit your proposal digitally, you'll get a confirmation email. And within that email will be a certification statement that'll be used as the cover letter for your hard copy proposal. So that certification statement, if you want to look at it before your confirmation email, is found on the resources page. I'll show it to you right now. This just needs to be signed by a staff member as well as a non-compensated board member. And this will be the cover letter for their hard copy of your proposal. And you're probably wondering right now, well, how do we print up a hard copy of the proposal if it's all online? Well, we're going back to the Download Submission button, which I pointed out at the beginning of this My section of the webinar. If you click this button, you'll get this page. This will generate a zipped folder of all of the elements of your proposal, and it will include one PDF document as well that is an aggregation of all of the elements. And I'm going to show this to you right after I click here. This is a zipped folder of my somewhat complete proposal. Extract it. And the folder is given the title of the unique application number. We show this to you right here. So you can see that the number of the application, that is your application identifier number, is used as the folder name. And within that folder will be all the elements that you've completed or uploaded as part of the proposal. The item that we want you to print up is the PDF document that has the same number as your application, because this is an aggregate of all the different elements that you have filled out or uploaded to your proposal. And as you can see, all the random stuff I put into this fake proposal, including that scary face, print up this one document, attach to it this cover letter, and you need to mail it in to us or hand deliver it to us by August 30th. And by mailing it to us, that's a postmark deadline, so you just need to get it into the mail by that deadline. hand delivering it to us. As Alma mentioned earlier, you have to be aware of our location and how difficult the traffic gets during later in the day, especially at the end of the week. And that concludes my section of the webinar. If there are any questions at this point, now is the time to ask them. If you do have any questions that you think of after the webinar, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. Our phone number is 213-202-5566. Our general email address is dca.grants@lacity.org, and we'll respond to your questions and emails as we receive them. So are there any other questions that are being typed in, Alma?
No other questions. I don't see any.
All right. Well, with no more questions, we're going to be closing the webinar. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. One final note, we record our webinars, and we'll be selecting the one that we feel is the best of the webinars that we conducted, and we'll be posting that online as a reference for those who are unable to attend a webinar or who would like to revisit a webinar. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to receiving your proposals.